Hi, I'm Brian Schneider with MidHudson Injury Law, and today we're going to be speaking about multi-plaintiff cases and some of the issues that present themselves in those situations. We're going to touch on some issues like conflicts of interest, collaboration between attorneys and among attorneys in representing multiple plaintiffs in a case involving the same accident, and some of the other experiences that my good friend and I, Bruce Sheriff, have had collaborating in these circumstances in the past. So welcome, Bruce. It's nice to see you, and I'm happy to be able to have you on so we can talk about some of our experiences and successes in the past.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me, and I look forward to our chat.
So let's just start with the easy stuff, at least easy for you and I. I think it makes the most sense to focus on cases where the conflicts are so obvious or patent to people in our profession, and that usually involves auto accidents. And naturally, our greatest successes and our some of our biggest cases in which we collaborated involved auto accidents. But can you just explain why, and just generally, why we need to have individuals who are injured in the same car accident when they're in the same car, say driver and a passenger, like in our situations? Why is it important for them to have their own attorneys in those circumstances?
Sure. So in New York, we have a thing called joint and several liability. When you have a car accident in New York, the passenger can make a claim both against the driver of each car involved in an accident. So, for example, if you have a two-car accident, that passenger can make a claim both against the driver of the car they're in and the other car. And all that passenger has to show is 1% fault of each driver. And they are then entitled to 100% from each of the vehicles. That immediately creates a conflict between a driver and a passenger when there could be any possibility of 1% fault on the driver, even if it's their spouse, even if it's their brother or sister, a family member. That conflict creates an issue where one attorney should not be representing both the driver and the passenger.
So I'm sure even in cases that we haven't collaborated on, you've probably had conversations with spouses typically who are just scratching their head as to why they need separate lawyers when it's very clear and very plain as to who is responsible for the accident. And usually in those instances, it's a second vehicle. How I know how I address it, but how do you address speaking to those couples in those circumstances? And generally, what's your response to that? Or what's their response to that when you have to break it down for them?
You get that all the time. And the first thing that I always tell them is you've paid for this insurance. And that's why you pay for insurance, so that when you're hurt, you can be compensated. One spouse says, but I don't want to sue the other spouse, or I don't want to sue my brother. And I remind them that they have been dutifully paying their premiums to the insurance company. And the insurance company has an obligation to make a payment if there is liability found. So I explained it to them in that way, that they've been paying for the insurance. You have a right and you're entitled to this.
And I know as lawyers, we can easily see the need to have each of them represented by their own attorneys. But it's a struggle sometimes. I'm sure you've seen it too. But my husband didn't do anything wrong. This car ran a red light. This car was driven by a drunk driver, and they just can't seemingly wrap their heads around this, even though it might be plain to you and I. And I know sometimes it can cause some friction. Thankfully, when I've been in those circumstances, I've always been able to have like a calm logic prevail, and then I can make those referrals to you. And I know you've been kind enough to reciprocate and send similarly conflicted clientele my way. So why don't we just talk about briefly some of our collective experience where we've had to collaborate in those circumstances, and some of the upside that can come with people having their own lawyers, not necessarily because it's required, but there is another practical, substantive upside as well. And I'll start by noting that I think when you and I have collaborated on cases, even though we technically might be representing people who are on paper in adverse posture to one another, there's still a lot of good that can come from it. So I know in our collective experience, when we've worked together, we're able to present a united front and put a lot of good pressure on the other side to make things happen more quickly, or to maybe even in the big picture get better results for our clients. What's your take on that?
I would agree 100%. I always tell clients that they can go find another attorney, but it is so much better if their family member is represented by someone that I know and can work with. Because we work, even though we are representing our own clients, they have their own interests, we're also working as a team. And as a team, we can keep the pressure on the other side so that whatever we do will work out best for both of our clients.
Couldn't say it better. I want to touch on some of the keys to success that we had in our most significant collaboration going back probably like 3 years or so now. I remember it very vividly. You called me. It was a beautiful fall day. You indicated that you were referred two young women who were both badly injured in a terrible accident upstate, and you made it plain to the people who connected you to these people that one of them was going to need their own lawyer. And I remember from day one, you and we drove up together because it was not local to us. And it really, as terribly injured as those young ladies were, I knew and I saw, and then their experience with us throughout was very positive. They both were very responsive to us. They were very grateful. And they were relatively, comparatively upbeat considering how difficult that their recoveries were. Collaborating from that first moment, though, after we met with them at the hospital, I remember we went right to the accident scene together. We deliberated on the location where this occurred. We took photos. We kind of, mapped out and set the chessboard, if you will. So just having two minds in that very instance at the very outset, I felt was very valuable.
No, I would agree 100%. I also remember our ride up there. My client couldn't even speak to me when we got there. But one of the really good things that came of it for our clients is that it was a very expensive case to pursue, but because we were working together, we could pool our resources and our clients could get the benefit of sharing those expenses instead of paying for them privately. Had I not known you and had it been another attorney representing the passengers in the car, I would have had to pay for my experts. You would have had to pay for your experts. Instead, we were able to share in a lot of the things that we did together. Also, I remember really well that we, as part of our strategy, decided that we were going to subpoena a non-party witness and get that witness first. And we had the other side, they were always on the defensive from the minute we file our actions. We planned when we would file them, who would file them when. We would do it right after the other, and we just kept them under constant pressure the entire way through the case.
You're absolutely right. And that reminded me of the other way in which we collaborated very effectively. After we took that important non-party witness's deposition testimony, she was an eyewitness to the immediate aftermath of this accident, who also happened to be a registered nurse. So she was offering some modicum of post-accident care to both our clients. That was an incredibly important testimony to secure. Moving forward, though, we realized that there was going to be extensive body cam footage available from the state police officers who had shown up. And I know I crafted a subpoena to be signed by the judge, which is required by the state police. And we set that up, and we got basically a treasure trove of video footage from the immediate aftermath of the accident, which was very chaotic. And I remember we also collaborated on hiring a video editor to put together a very persuasive, condensed kind of like compilation of some of that powerful body cam footage. I know we talked about whether or not that it may not be evidentiary if push came to shove in court, but even if that were the case, I remember we shared it with our adversaries, and it was very compelling. And being able to collaborate with you on that and, yes, share our clients' expenses on it was a very effective economical way to get the point home for both of them. And to the extent it wasn't clear beforehand, in this particular accident, it was very clear who was responsible for it. My client was the passenger and Bruce represented the driver. And it was one of those situations where it was very obvious to us that the driver, Bruce's client of the host car that we were both in, did not do anything wrong at all. It was very plain to us, but nonetheless, that conflict still kicked in because neither of us were certain exactly what the other driver was going to argue or allege or whatever the other evidence might have reflected because it was so early on. So even though it turned out that that other driver was truly responsible for blowing that stop sign and blowing that red light, and then this was the rare example where this was an intersection that had both, it did not matter. Our clients both needed their own representation and their own attorneys so that they could have their economic interests protected and vigorously represented throughout.
Well, even more important, at the end of the day, if I had kept everyone, then my passengers, if I had actually decided there's no liability, I would not have been able to get as much money as you were able to get for the passenger because you, even though my client did nothing wrong and everyone knew it, yeah, my client's car did extend money to the passengers. So your clients got the benefit of not just the policy of the other driver, but also from my car. And it's me representing everyone. I could not have done that. I could not ask for that.
And even though there was a very modest contribution from your client's insurance company, that's the point is still the same. It would have been nothing from them had they not had their own attorney. And I know we do these videos, Bruce. I know you and your partner have done some CLEs and posted, some of your commentary and some of the lessons that you were transmitting through those CLE programs. You've seen it too. There are law firms that will try to hold on to all of those people in one case. And in my experience, that's just playing with fire. Do you know offhand? I know a couple of things, but I know if firms kind of get caught with their hand in the cookie jar, that there can be some serious consequences if they're trying to hold on to everybody and everything. Have you ever had that experience where you were in a multi-plaintiff case and that happened?
I have not had that personally. I've heard about it. Eventually, what some of those law firms have to do, it's an ethical violation, and they have to stop representing all the parties. And then the parties have to go find new attorneys. So they got to start all over. Yeah, it's just not the right way to do it. And You and I have known each other for a long time, and over the years, we've had several cases where it's a driver and a passenger, and right from the get-go, we know that that's what has to be done, and the clients are best served when right from the beginning, the lawyers are working together.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better. And I believe if lawyers or firms get caught in that circumstances, not only are they disqualified from representing anybody in that case, I think they may also just be disqualified from sharing in any fee with a grassy near and dear to all attorneys, their fee, their money, of course, naturally. So the better part of valor and really the better part of just doing the right thing by your clientele is to make sure that they have separate representation from the outset. Let's just briefly touch on one other matter in which we collaborated. It was also, again, it was a 2-car auto accident, but in that situation, there was a death involved, and not in the car in which either of our clients were traveling, but the offending car. There was a death, and I remember this one was also upstaked quite a ways. And I remember in that instance, the ladies contacted me, and I knew right from the get-go when they told me that there was a death involved with the offending vehicle. I knew immediately, no matter how clean cut and how obvious it was, who was responsible for the accident. And in that case, it was the driver of the offending vehicle. I knew immediately that I was going to have a separate representation for one of them. And I referred the driver in that car to you. I know we were hoping in that other accident to hear from the driver of that offending vehicle who was cited. He was issued some citations for some traffic violations. And because there was a fatality involved, there was something called a DMV fatality hearing that was actually scheduled for both drivers, that is your client and the driver of the offending vehicle. Can you just detail what your experience overall has been with those types of hearings and how useful they can be to helping with actual personal injury cases, and offer anything else that you think might be of value on that subject?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know about how other attorneys practice law, but when we do a personal injury case, if there's a death, I went with the client in that case. I had her prepared because she was going to be questioned by the police, by the state. What they really want to do is they just want to make sure that when someone dies in a car accident, they get all the facts before they're going to render a final report. And representing someone who's been involved in an accident where someone dies, it's your responsibility to go with your client when they go to these hearings. I was also prepared, as I'm sure you were as well, that had the other driver showed up to this hearing, we would have had a lot of questions to ask him. And this is all prior to any lawsuit being filed. So you basically get 2 bites at the apple at the testimony for the other driver as well.
Yeah,
It's very important.
that's useful. And I've attended a few of these throughout my career. There can oftentimes be quite a delay in when they are actually conducted, but in many instances, even that delay doesn't necessarily hamper a lawsuit. In that, I mean, it's rare sometimes when you have a death case involved, particularly where you're going to file suit immediately, because a lot of things have to happen to set up an estate and gather the evidence, etc. So sometimes the delay or the perceived delay could actually be helpful. But in the case that I'm thinking about in which we collaborated, yes, we were hopeful that we would have the opportunity to at least eyeball and see the offending driver and maybe ask some questions. It's, in my experience, it can vary how much leeway the administrative law judges want to extend to people like ourselves to question the other drivers. I've seen it pretty tight and I've seen it pretty loose. And just to be clear to our audience here, an administrative law judge in these fatality hearings is actually an employee of the state of New York. if not the DMV. And so their purpose and their rationale, if you will, for conducting the hearings is a little different than what lawyers like myself and Bruce are striving for. But nonetheless, as you said very eloquently, it can prove very valuable, a very valuable way to come up with information and evidence that could help support and bolster our clients' presentations in court. Well, Bruce, listen, I want to thank you for joining me. I think this went really well. Maybe we'll do this again down the road, talk about some other topics and subjects, but thank you. And thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brian. And I would look forward to doing this again.
Cool.
Invite me soon.
I will. And to our audience, thank you. You can follow me on YouTube. You'll see all the socials and some of the other graphics that will be popping up through this video. And thank you very much.